Okay, well, I guess I've been staring at these HeroQuest models long enough. I can talk about them. Hey, how's everybody doing? It's Friday. I'm feeling kind of mellow. I'm gonna take this hat off, but what are we looking at? HeroQuest models. So yeah, I had a few days to digest these now. I did my initial reaction video to them, and now this is sort of my more thought out feels of it. And yeah, so I'm just sort of going to talk about I'm going to talk about the miniatures because that's my that is what would bring me into HeroQuest if I was a kid today looking for a fantasy game like this that was easy to play. Um, and again, for full disclosure, I've never played HeroQuest. I've always been aware of it. Back when HeroQuest came out, I had my head thoroughly up Warhammer 40,000's buttocks, and that was all I wanted to do was play 40k and paint 40k. And if it wasn't 40k, I wasn't interested, and I certainly wasn't 1990ish. I certainly wasn't interested in fantasy. That was deep sci-fi genre enjoyment for me, and that carried on for years and years. And I guess for context, I read Lord of the Rings when I was 19, 20. I read Lord of the Rings before I read Dune, but that's neither here nor there because we're talking about HeroQuest. These guys here. So I'm just going to say right now, my biggest criticism of the HeroQuest miniatures is that they are heavily generic and heavily derivative. And everything in the HeroQuest box set, all those models in there, all look like they've been dragged together from other places. So the orcs are Warcraft orcs. So here's the Fishman. So the Fishman's the only thing that's different because they can't do Famir. So they did Fishmen instead, and I guess what do they call them? Something Deep Abominations. I think they look cool, but again, they look like they came from something else. That's a Chaos Warrior, so that obviously came from something else. But that's also just an armored barbarian, so that's just a trope. Like that's just a thing. So that model, I don't really hold too much against it. The Mummy looks like it comes from some sort of horror board game, like some sort of Cthulhu-ish sort of thing. And then I don't like the scythe. So when I saw this model, my first thought was like, well, where have I seen that before? And it's like everywhere. What's the name of that game? It's a card game. Something Stone. Anyways, it's a modern fantasy style that I just don't care for. And then you got the goblins, which are clearly just Pathfinder goblins. So you can see where they've cobbled that from. And I think that the fact that they're crowdsourcing this, and that's what Hasbro is a billion-dollar company, and they're crowdsourcing the production of this game. What does that tell you about the faith that they have in what they're doing, or how much they actually care about doing it? So I think is actually what you're gonna get is I don't think you're gonna get anything rules-wise that's different. I think they are reprinting the game word for word. They probably went through with a word eraser to they obviously changed chaos to dread. And then they probably, they may have cleaned up some of the verbiage a little bit, but at the end of the day, you're probably getting the exact same game as the original HeroQuest. And like I said, I don't have a dog in the fight over the original HeroQuest. I don't have a nostalgia dog that's gnawing at my ankle, telling me that I need to hate this stuff because it's not my HeroQuest. I've never had a HeroQuest, so I don't know. The four here, the orcs are again they're War Master orcs. Or not War Master, Warcraft. See, I barely even play that game. I'm not a huge video gamer. I like RPG kind of video games. My favorite would be obviously Mass Effect, and I'll talk about that if someone wants to talk about that at some point. Hey, Torben in the chat, how do you do? I think they're mostly doing it for us to reclaim the copyright. I don't think Hasbro has to reclaim the copyright. Maybe they do. Maybe that's what it is. In which case it's a cash grab. So in which case they basically hired a bunch of I don't know who the sculptors are, and they're decent sculpts. They're not horrible models. They're not my thing. They're not what I think of when I think of elves. And regardless of whether I'm thinking of elves made 30 years ago or I'm thinking of elves miniatures made this year, There's nothing about that particular elf that I care about. And I think I said like that the dagger ears and that the anime Record of Lotus War is the first time I can remember seeing that kind of like stylized. And again, that's what I said about that model. What you're seeing is you're seeing an anime influence on the elf. The barbarian's just a barbarian. He's got some braids in his hair. Like he is so generically barbarian. But what is a generic barbarian now? Like what is a barbarian? I jokingly said somewhere that someone was saying, well, what kind of is this barbarian? And how do barbarians fit into the Warhammer lore? And I said, well, there's a lot of land north of Kislev, right? Like northwest of Kislev, there's a huge amount of land up there. So who knows, like what tribe step right. And then from the person's reaction to that, I sort of realized, oh, their version of Warhammer starts probably around 6th edition, and so maybe the concept of Norsica, because there wasn't models produced at that time that were Norse, was sort of in their version of Warhammer. But I'm digressing off Hero Quest because this is not my version of Hero Quest because I don't have a version of Hero Quest. So there's the barbarian. He's a perfectly serviceable barbarian. I would get him and paint him up as Conan. And I would write the name Conan on his base to signify who he is. The dwarf is Warcraft again. But again, that sort of aesthetic. I wish I could remember the name of that game. It's made by the same company that makes the Warhammer Age of Sigmar card game, which I actually think is a really good card game, and I played the hell out of it, and I own a bunch of cards, and I have way too many points on the app because I played that game a lot. Thunderstone, is that something stone? Maybe Thunderstone. It uses the same like rotating card mechanic, but yeah, it's something stone. But again, the art style in that is so. I guess what I'm saying is that modern fantasy art feels really derivative, and I don't care for a lot of it. I'm pretty much, but that again depends what you grew up with, and what I grew up with was, classic fantasy artwork. So I don't hold it against anyone if that's their style. If people love to draw that sort of style, great. I hope that they are happy, and I hope that people are happy and enjoy their work. It's not for me to say what art should and shouldn't be consumed. So yeah, but again, if I was someone looking at Hero Quest, I would I think it's designed to have the widest, broadest appeal, so nothing really feels like there's a set theme to things, right? And the original Hero Quest was, I guess, kind of like that, because you had sort of orcs and goblins mixed in with Chaos Warriors and weird things like Famirs and gargoyles that could very well just be painted red and called a Bloodthirster. Speaking of Bloodthirsters, sorry. Here, I'll throw a little bit of hobby up here while we're talking. While I'm talking crap about the new Hero Quest. I'm sorry. So yeah, so this Bloodthirster was painted, and I think there's a painted example on the EternalChronicles.ca of its first paint job. I stripped it 6 months ago, and then primed and started to repaint it. He's not quite done. The whip needs to be finished, and his base needs to be finished. And then there's detailings like teeth and eyes, and then cleaning up the metallic a little bit, just making sure that it glints a little bit better. But the red is essentially done. And it's a really deep red, and it was actually arrived at by accident. Oh, don't mind those orcs. We'll just put those over there for now. The red, I'm just going to zoom in here for you. Whoop, zoom out, I said zoom out, right? Oh, there we go. That's a much better. So yeah, so that's an original Bloodthirster. This was, when I first painted it, it was painted for my 2nd edition Chaos Space Marine army, my Black Legion / World Eaters combo army. Because back then, that 2nd edition Chaos Codex. One day I will go through that 2nd edition Chaos Codex, and I have so many good memories of just sitting on my back porch reading that thing for hours and hours and hours, night after night after night. By far, in my opinion, the best codex of 2nd edition 40k. Maybe not my most significant. The most significant one. I'd say it's the most significant. I don't know. I love the Eldar Codex too, because obviously I have a massive Eldar Army for 2nd edition, which one day will show up here on this screen. So yeah, so that's the Bloodthirst that I'm working on, because we were talking about, I was talking about the gargoyle for that thing. Oh, and we're back to an orc. So it likes to show pictures of the orcs, I guess. I don't know why. Maybe there's more pictures of orcs. And we're back to the Fishman. So again, yeah, no Famir, because they don't own it. I don't. Does anyone own Famir? And maybe they just wanted that. Maybe they just wanted something that would just, you know, not be. And again, the Chaos Warrior. The only models I like are the furniture. And there are a lot of companies out there that are doing like scale furniture for RPGs, and like Reaper and Nolzur's. And Nolzur's is WizKids, right? So does Hasbro own WizKids? I just assume they own everything. If someone can let me know. Does Hasbro own WizKids? Because if they are, then they already release fantasy furniture. So that's another thing to talk about, is that they didn't rebrand it at all. They just are reprinting, right? Because Hasbro owns Wizards of the Coast, so they could have made it Magic the Gathering Hero Quest. And maybe that's a plan. Maybe they'll be like, if this does well, and we're crowdfunding it, so we're not losing anything on this. We're not taking any risk. You know, Hasbro's not assuming any risk for the production of this version of Hero Quest, which shows you, again, how much faith they have in it. And the lack of a cohesive theme to the miniatures. But I guess how cohesive can you get when you're mixing, you know, things like that? I don't know. But again, it feels so derivative. It feels like it's all drawn from elsewhere and stuck together into a pile. And yeah, not a fan of the miniatures. But people love Hero Quest. People love the game of Hero Quest. People love to play Hero Quest. A lot of people don't have access to a copy of Hero Quest. Among my social circle, my group, my community, there's probably 2 or 3 copies floating out there of the original. I know that my friend Claudio, shout out to Claudio, he has a fully painted core. And I think now he's talking about 3D furniture, like 3D painting furniture. So he's all in on the Hero Quest, and I'm gonna get him here sometime to come in, or we'll meet up somewhere wherever we can. We'll, you know what, if we have to, we'll do it in a park on a park bench. You know, have power, will travel. Yeah, so that's, I guess, what I have to say about Hero Quest. So let's see what's going on. So Torben, you are on fire in the chat. I do agree, though, yeah, that it's not for us, but 12-year-olds. And so that's maybe why it doesn't tickle me, is because it's not, you know, the version that was marketed to me at when I was the target audience age was lost on me because, and I said this somewhere else, that, you know, I was so enthralled with 40K at that time that I thought I was too good for anything else. And I was certainly too good for a game published by a company like Milton Bradley, right? Like, I'm too good for Monopoly at this point I'm just, all I want to do is play Rogue Trader, and that's pretty much all I did do. So, and I was, you know, what's the line from the episode of Community when Pierce Hawthorne said, "I won Dungeons and Dragons, and it was advanced." So yeah, I much prefer the advanced games, unless it's BattleTech, in which case I got nothing to say about BattleTech. I'm gonna go back to the master shot there. Maybe I'll zoom out a little. So I was gonna zoom out so that we could sort of look and do some various other things. That's why I had it zoomed out originally, but I zoomed in to show you the Bloodthirster. That's the story of that. Well, Warhammer Fantasy Battle and 40K also started as being derivative of everything else. Exactly, and that's what it is, though, right? Like, is that, and I sort of talked about that. I think I talked about that on yesterday's episode. How Warhammer started as something that was pulled from all these literary sources, right? And that's what really it was what influenced Rick Priestley, right? Like, what Warhammer 40K is Rick Priestley absorbing science fiction literature and fantasy literature and alternative literature and trying to vomit it out into a silly little game you play with toy soldiers, right? So that's essentially what Warhammer 40,000 Rogue Trader was, and it was amazing that he got to chase his whimsy and do that. And it was amazing that we all got to enjoy it. Those of us who enjoyed it, and those of us who are still enjoying Warhammer 40,000, can thank that man for doing that, and can thank Games Workshop. So I guess Brian Ansell for doing that too. I'm gonna tuck in here, and yeah. So what I've got on the table is some space orcs. So these are I posted on my Instagram. If you don't follow me on Instagram, follow me at Instagram. I think at the Eternal Chronicles, the _Eternal _ Chronicles, or just go to chronicles.ca and you can see everything else. Everything that I have there right now is there. There's going to be more there because tomorrow I have to do this on the weekend because during the week I've got the lights set up for doing this, but these lights will turn into studio lights, and I'm going to be photographing a whole bunch of stuff over this weekend. I'm going to set up my backdrop and just sort of really go to town and photograph everything that I've painted within the last year, definitely. Probably that hasn't been photographed, that is finished within the last 5 years, since the last time I sat down and did some good photography on things. So Alex in the chat, how's it going? The beauty of the simplicity of original Hero Quest in both gameplay and miniatures is it has left a lot of room for your 10-year-old imagination. And at that point, I think that Hasbro now owns both me and Alex some royalties for that soundbite. Him for writing it and me for reciting it. Torben, yes, very true. Which in turn created a lot of love of the narrative and RPG gaming in kids like myself as opposed to competitive. So there you go. So Alex is an example of someone who probably transitioned from Hero Quest into more mature gaming, which I would classify Warhammer as, right? And my experience was different, right? And everybody has a different experience and everyone has a different hobby, and that's your chronicle, right? That's kind of what this website's all about. This is my chronicle. So my chronicle involves orcs. It's always involved orcs for a long, long time. My chronicle has involved orcs, and maybe it should. It veers off drastically in opposite directions sometimes. Sometimes I'm doing something. I'm doing things that like to kill orcs. Sometimes I'm doing things that have nothing to do with orcs. There's always some ancillary connection there, though, right? But so these orcs. So this is something that I'm preparing for Orktober, and Orktober's big. I'm launching the countdown to Orktober today because today's Friday, and next Friday is also a Friday, and this was kind of what the show is going to be like on Fridays. Less, more just me yelling at my microphone, and yeah. So these guys arrived, and what I thought I would do, because I don't know how many people actually have to do this anymore. Obviously, there are still games that produce miniatures in metal. Probably the best being Infinity. The next best being, well, Privateer Press still produces in metal, don't they? That new game, Warcaster. What's up with that game? Orcs like to kill orcs. Exactly. The Inquisitors know, man. The Inquisitors know. We know. And that's, hence the hat. If you missed the hat at the very beginning of the stream, there we go. So this is my alter ego, and I'll probably be introducing him at some point when I get the balls up to do it. Yeah, so these guys arrived. I'm gonna clean them because there are some mold lines and stuff on them. So what do you need to clean metal miniatures? Well, you can hear me rifling for a bunch of random tools, right? So you need files, and I have a bunch of files. This is a dental pick, and a lot of times when I'm stripping models, if there's little bits of paint that are caught inside, this is really good for sort of grabbing them out. The hook, it's supposed to sort of hook a little bit. The hook has been worn over time. I've had it for quite a while, but you can pick up one of these. I'm pretty sure I got this one at Active Surplus for like 50 cents a long time ago. So I'm not sure where you can buy dental instruments now. I think Active Surplus is still around. Yo, people, Torontonians in the chat, let me know. So this is a bunch of different files. But of course, it's not the file I'm looking for because the file I want. I prefer rounded files. Well, no. Oh my gosh, At one point, you have to start throwing away files. So let's take a look at my file collection here. And I don't even think this is all of it because I'm missing the one file I'm looking for. Sometimes that file, sometimes that file ends up back with my paintbrushes. So that's this little guy here. So it's basically round. And I have one that's oval as well, but I won't go hunting for that right now because this one will do what I want to do just fine. So I'll zoom in for you. Sorry about the tremors here. I keep zooming out when I want to zoom in. Eventually I'll get that remote control sorted out for this thing so I don't have to reach up. But you can see sort of some mold lines here. And I'm not a fan of mold lines. Now, whoever owned these previous, these have been stripped. And the previous owner probably cleaned them a little bit. But I tend to like things overly clean, especially on metal. So there's still bits of flash on here that I can kind of look at and go, okay, so right on the end of his scabbard here, this is all flash, right? Like you can see, I can even put my knife behind it. So that's all flash, so that needs to be cut off. So I'm just going to figure out which way the scabbard is supposed to curve, and then I'm just going to peel it with my knife and try and shape it a little bit and use the edge of my knife to plane it a little bit, and then I'll take another look at it. And hopefully that all showed up on camera because I wasn't actually paying attention at that point. I'm more concerned about not cutting myself than I am with placement on camera. Yeah, maybe we'll go out just a smidge. Get a little bit better focus there. So yeah, so what do we got here? Orcs like to kill orcs. Gotta go. Okay, Alex. I'm pretty sure he posted that a while back, but I'm just reading it now. So yeah. So that's my thoughts on Hero Quest. I guess my very controversial thoughts on Hero Quest. Is anyone ordering it? I assume Alex owns a copy, so maybe he's not going to order it. And then this one I like as well, but this is actually an older one. I probably have a newer one in here because, again, I don't throw these things out, and I probably should. At least the old ones. Unless they still work, they still work, right? A good tool is a good tool. It could last you a lifetime if you take care of it. So they probably don't need to be thrown out. I mean, they're a little rusty, but whatever. So, yeah. Man, we've had some nice warm days here this week. And I've been outside for as much of it as I can. Obviously, I'm inside doing this right now, but I'm usually out for a walk before and usually after, if I gotta go pick up the kid. And then we will go on an adventure, or we'll go to the playground, whatever her choice is. That's her choice in that time. Yeah. Matthew McInnes. Hey, Matthew. I think I will pick up a copy. My daughter is starting to get into minis games. That's awesome. It's probably a good starting point. Definitely. There's plenty of other good starting points, but Hero Quest is one of those ones that gets you something simple and easy and has a lot of depth to it where you can play a lot of it. Because if it's anything, I mean, I understand the principle of Hero Quest, even though I haven't played it. I've actually read the rule book. I've been aware of the game since its inception, so you sort of absorb a lot. So I do feel somewhat entitled to an opinion on Hero Quest, but again, I just want to sort of, stress that, like, my view is someone who never played the original game. My view is someone who doesn't have any nostalgia or any attachment to it, other than it's something that was produced by Games Workshop, which is a company that I greatly respect and has had a huge impact on my life. The fact that, models that I started painting, 30 something years ago and I'm still painting them today is testament to how much of an impact this has had on my life. And the fact that I'm doing this in front of people now on YouTube certainly belies its significance, right? Or informs of its significance. Anyways, Des Brennan, is it a reprint or a total redo? It's a reprint. I think I said that if you caught the earlier part. I think what you're going to get is something that they have gone through with some fancy editing software like Microsoft Word and have just replaced all the instances of some words with other words. Like, I don't know if someone has played the original Hero Quest. Can they tell me, is Chaos are they Chaos Warriors in that box, or do they call them something else? Because I said that the other day. I was like, oh, they just changed Chaos to Dread. And then I was thinking about it a little bit further, because I tend to think about things a little bit further. And it made me go, oh, well, wait a second. Maybe they were always Dread. Maybe they were never Chaos. They were Chaos in Advanced Hero Quest, I'm pretty sure it was Chaos stuff. And Familiar kind of creatures of Chaos. Kinda. They were the first, right? They were the first creatures of Chaos. And then the Chaos Gods forsaked them for mankind. And the Familiar never forgave the Chaos Gods. My recollection was Chaos, but I don't know. So, regardless, that's what they did. And they probably have, like I said, they probably cleaned up some of the verbiage, may have modernized some of the explanations to make it clearer. They've obviously, it's all new art. I wonder what the black and white art on the card face will be, not on the back. Like the backs, they seem to have these like really fancy modern fantasy takes of things, and I'm not a fan. I don't know. I made that very clear in the first 15 minutes of the video. I think I made my feelings on the new Hero Quest design aesthetic. So I would love to hear, who's getting it. And yeah, if your daughter is going to get into playing into this, like I'm kind of a pusher on my kid in this respect, where I'm kind of like, let's paint miniatures, and she does, and I haven't shown any of her miniatures. I made a test video of what's in my miniature cabinet behind me here, and you can see. Oh, sorry, I'm doing this totally off camera, so you can't see anything. There's like a piece of flash coming out of this orc's butt. So again, I'm just gonna grab it, and literally, that's a piece of metal that's been. The original person who bought these and painted these didn't bother to clean that off. I'm shaming you from 30 years in the future. So my recollection. What other starting points to minis would you suggest? Buying some minis and buying a paint set. Going to your friendly local gaming store and looking what miniatures they have on the wall, and don't care about what game it is. Don't care about what it is. See something that you want to paint. Because you're only going to ever paint. You're only going to be happy painting a model that you want to paint. It's my experience. I will bog down. Well, cleaning miniatures on camera is harder than painting miniatures on camera. I will bog down on something that I don't want to paint, and then it will feel like a slog, and then I will lose interest, and then it may not get the best out of me in terms of completeness, right? Things that are a joy to paint for me, things that I look at and go, I have to put my brush on that. I will always finish those models, and they will always be to a standard that I'm more than happy with, usually. Like I said before, you have to lower your expectations sometimes. Sometimes when painting miniatures, you have to lower your expectations to the point where they're already met, and that's when you end up not painting anything, because you're just like, ugh. Well, I cleaned them and I built them, and now they're going to sit in a box in the basement for how many years until I up and get rid of them one way or another. And I have a lot of that. I have stuff that has been started and should be finished. Like armies that should be finished, where it's like most of the models are ready and game ready, but there's one unit that I didn't paint the skin on, so everything else is done except that their skin is all just splotchy and washed or whatever, and I just don't have the impetus to go and finish that. What I should do, and what I'm hoping that I can do and use this as sort of something to do that with, would be that I would be pulling out some of those old projects and finishing them on the stream. So my Empire Army, which is a perfect example. So my Empire Army is an army from Nuln, and I've got one miniature up here from it because I was actually using him on some test painting videos that I did. So here's a perfect example. He sat in my Empire Army, completed to the point where the only thing that wasn't completed was his sword and the skull on the end of his staff. Everything else on this model is done. And it's funny, when I realized when I finished painting him and I'm looking at it and I'm like, those flames are upside down. And people were looking, I'm like, oh, it's so awesome, it's so awesome. I'm like, yeah, but isn't there something wrong with it? And they look and they're like, no, I don't know. I said, well, the flames are upside down, right? It's whiter near the tips, so it's hotter at the tips than it would be that it's coming off his body. So he's generating energy that then is transforming into fire, right? And I like his jade staff. I think I did a bang-up job on that. And then I finished all the gold on him. So yeah, so my test was finishing the gold, finishing the sword, which still isn't finished. So this model's still not done. I just realized, I'm looking at the sword, I'm like, that's not done. The skull up here, I wanted to go with a burnt iron sort of feel to it. So it actually probably needs a little bit more love with some washes and some dry brushes to really make it look like a solid metal iron skull that would have come out of the Forges of Nuln. It was probably the skull of some famous pyromancer, or maybe even it's the skull of like the one of the guys who first started that forge in Nuln, right? Like one of the first blacksmiths in that forge. They revered him, and so they cast his skull in iron. And then when he came along to like requisition an army, and was like, look, just bring all the black powder. Because if you've ever seen my Empire army, which you will, you'll get to see my Empire army. It's a Warhammer 7th, 8th edition Empire army, so it's the most recent plastics for the most part. But it's still an army that I built back whenever 7th edition Warhammer came out. I'll show you his back, just for the sake of completeness. You get to see the back, so you can see that sword is still not done. So I still need to finish this model one day. Yeah. So again, my Empire army is a lot of black powder. Oh, you know what else is up here? Sorry, I lied. This is up here because it takes up space, and the way that my Empire army is currently packed, I wanted to keep it safe, so I keep it in the back of my hobby hutch, and it's just awesome anyway. So this is my stank, my steam tank, and I will zoom out so you can actually see its tankiness. Oh, look at that slow zoom. That's some professional camera work right there. Yeah, so this is my Nuln steam tank, and I guess I was going for something crisp and factory fresh, although I did do a little bit of aging on the iron, but I would imagine that like when these things would have been forged, they would have been forged separately, right? Like the cannon would have come from the best cannon forge in Nuln, right? Whereas the armor on the side would have come from wherever they're probably building the tank, whatever could make, you know, big sheets of steel like that. You have to have some pretty good blacksmiths and you know, constructors to do that. And then you got the little one up top. And then the same with the back, like the engine, the boiler, and all that was probably, you know, manufactured somewhere else. And they probably brought it to Nuln, and I should paint its license plate here, because I painted the scroll work, but I didn't write anything on it because I'm scared to do freehand. I need you guys to give me the courage to go back, and because yeah, here too, right? Scroll work, nothing painted, but nothing written on it. So I need oh, look up here too. Oh my god. All right, well, there's a lot of work to finish this thing, right? Now, it's not even, the base isn't even done yet. You can see I've dry brushed the base, but I haven't taken the victory lap of painting the rim of the base. That's usually what you do when a model's done. You take that victory lap. So that's the stank. We'll toss that back over there. So what's going on in this chat? Flames aren't upside down, it's magic. See, well, I explained that, right? Like he's generating magical whateverness around him, and that's the transformative effect of that is that it creates fire coming off him, so it's getting hotter as it emanates off him. So he's fine. He's just like, he's in a little bubble, and the magic fire doesn't hurt him because he's a pyromancer and he knows how to fucking control it. And don't we all just wish that we were, you know, wizards? I think I've got my kid convinced that I'm a wizard, and that's a good thing, because she's telling other kids at her school now that I'm a wizard. So that's hilarious, and that is not a claim I'm going to acknowledge or deny. So let's take a look at this guy. So these orcs are sculpted 88. So these would have been sculpted after. So these are all Kev Adams orcs. You know, I'm going to pull out my orcs. Yeah, that's right. It's the heavy tray. It's the heavy tray because it's full of lead. So I'll pull out we'll look at some orcs. This was content that I was going to save for Orktober, but you know what? Orktober come early today. So these orcs are the orcs, and I don't have all of them. I'm still missing one of them, but I have two of a variant of his, one of which is painted, and I have the unpainted variant as well. But we'll drag him over here because he's a little bit different, a little bit. So the first Space Orc release for Rogue Trader was these models, right? So there's these four, and on their base tab it says Trooper, and they're sculpted in 87. This is the Knob. This guy is one of the bosses, and this guy's like the champion. He's like the drill boss, but it's not this model. It's a variant of this model, but he looked like that. So you got 16 or 18 in the box. So you got duplicates of these four, and then you got one of each of the character guys, right? Oh, sorry, and there's a heavy bolter as well. The heavy bolter is awesome. I love how compact it is. So it's so compact, and you know that he's quite proud of how small he was able to make it. Or maybe he just couldn't make it any bigger. Maybe a grot made that heavy bolter for himself, and then the orc just took it. Who knows what story could be behind that? So that was sort of the initial run that he did. And sorry, I've got something in my eye, so I'm just going to get my eye a little scratch there. Get some lighter fluid so I can keep talking. So yeah, so these ones, which were sculpted in 88, and this one, 88, were sort of like the second wave that he did. So he did new bases, new base models in a lot of ways. Like there are variants, the ones that come in the box. Like there's a variant of this guy, I've got him. And I think he's actually the flamer guy. Yeah, so you can see like these two models, other than the weapon and the head, the same model, right? So this guy's got a gas tank on his back. So I painted this up like a flamer, even though I could call it a bolter. Like maybe this is just, whatever. Whoa! Saved. Those are my ninja-like reflexes. And I hope my little shriek there didn't freak out anyone on stream. So yeah, so those are the initial ones, and then they made variants after it. So, and that's what these guys are from. And I can show off some more of these models that I think are just absolutely fantastic. And it's funny because when I was thinking about so I decided to start doing a 40k orc army based on the fact that some 40k Rogue Trader orcs became available to me from a friend of mine, Michael Logan. Shout out Michael Logan, Logan's Miniature Mart. Check him out on Facebook. He's always selling old cool stuff for Warhammer and for other games and stuff. And he's got miniatures I've never seen and heard of, and that's rare. So I can tell you that there's definitely some rare models out there that I'm not aware of, which means Michael's got some of the good stuff. But he's got a lot of good Warhammer. If you want to starting a 7th edition army can be daunting because you can't get the new stuff for it. You can't, I guess if you want, but he's got that. Anyways, there's a topic worth going into, Warhammer comics. What comics have I read? Well, if I get up and I go to my bookcase, I can pull down my copy of The Redeemer, which is the Necromunda comic book. That's awesome. Other than that, I think I've read the WOG one, and I've read random issues of the Warhammer what was it called? The comic book, whatever, Warhammer comic. The Redeemer. And I saw someone I know just posted on a selling site that he has the Redeemer and his little apprentice, Mala, whatever. The Orc Air Force, that was the one. I think it was called, what was it called? Death Squadron, I think. Something like that. So, yeah. The Orc Air Force. What was the name of the Titanic comic the Titan comic that Dan Abnett wrote? Well, Dan Abnett wrote Malleus Darkblade, which I've read both of the omnibuses, and I'll talk about those at some point. I probably need to reread some of them because each one of them is 3 novels, and total it's an epic. If you like Warhammer fantasy and you like it done a little bit differently, and if you like it from the point of the Dark Elves, read the Malleus Darkblade series because it's absolutely fantastic. If you can get them, and I think they're republishing the first book, and it's Dan Abnett and someone else. It's Dan Abnett and another guy because they're adapting the comic book that Dan Abnett wrote. So I think the other guy may have done a lot of the filling in of stuff, but it's awesome. At one point, and this is not a spoiler because this happens throughout all 6 books, you won't know where it is in the 6 of them, but at one point his mom's got him captive in the basement of her castle, and she's just torturing him, and she's torturing him to the point where she's like breaking his body down to ligaments and then using magic to heal him back up and then doing it again. And it's so gruesome, and it goes into detail, and there's a few chapters where you're just where it's just Malleus Darkblade being tortured by his family, and you're like, okay, Warhammer, that's grimdark. Because here's my protagonist, my main character, who's not a nice person, but you kind of understand him, and you understand where he comes from and why he is the way he is, because he's a dark elf, and that's just the way we explore that side of evil that we've sort of, humans have moved beyond that. We're not like that anymore, if you believe that. Um, anyways, should I go back to cleaning these orcs, or do you want to see me paint some Escher? Let me know, because I will do that for the next little while. I think that those orcs they actually came to me in pretty good condition. And I don't remember ordering them. They just kind of arrived. I was not expecting the package at all. And I was like, what is this? And it was just 5 random space orcs. So the possibility exists that I bought them somewhere at some point in time. Because of the current lockdown, or past lockdown, maybe new current, again, lockdown for health purposes here in Ontario, Canada. The mail service was extremely just disrupted for a while, and it would take like, sometimes I'd get a package like a month later, 2 months, so this one, it's entirely possible this one could have been ordered. Well, it wouldn't have been ordered too long ago, because I wasn't gathering the horde, the orc horde at that point, which I'm done doing now, because it's ready to basically be created for you here on the Eternal Chronicles live. This is episode 7. 7 is a prime number, so 7 is a magical number. It contains much power, so it stands alone as a prime number. So this episode sort of stands alone as whatever this is, whatever we're engaging in here. Always be painting, says Torben. Well, you win. You win. Oh, I gotta get rid of this guy too. Ooh, there's orcs everywhere. All right, well let's paint some Escher then. So they're the ones that I'm working on. I'll throw them down over here. I'm just going to get a little bit more. Pardon me while I tuck in. I mean, you got to get as close to as possible to paint your lead pile without painting all of it. There's no way I could ever paint my lead pile. No, my hair's a disaster. Maybe I'll put the hat back on. That tends to fix my hair. Yeah, I will never be able to paint my entire lead pile. In fact, I need to get rid of a lot of stuff that may or may not be important to me. It's hard to say. Let's zoom in here. How's that? Looks pretty good. So I think what I'll do is I'm going to paint her headdress, I think. And that means I'm basically, well, I'll probably end up basing her entire, like, the head. So the head is, there's a tiger head, so it's like a tiger pelt or some kind of beast pelt. This is hair on the back of her head, and then these would be feathers coming off. So this entire headpiece, it's gray right now. It's not bad. I guess I need to figure out what color I'm going to paint her hair. The feathers, I've kind of been doing all the feathers uniform, and I'm not sure I want to stray too far from my formula for doing them. You know what? It's way too hot in here to be wearing a hat. So there. See? I told you. The hat fixes the hair. So let's see. Des, from emo to Dr. Moreau. Nice transition. Thanks, man. I'm not sure what that means, but are you saying that I look like, what's his name? The Godfather. So yeah, so that was what I was blathering about, was I've done all my feathers like this so far. And I think I want to do hers different, if only because in my background that I've sort of come up with her, she's one of these Tigranian alchemists. So she probably got that headdress from her sect, like probably her instructor or her tutor or her whoever was her, role model and taught her the ways of poisoning people to fuck. Gave her that headdress, I'm assuming that it's ceremonial. So I'm gonna do a little bit different. I think what I might do is I might alternate on, depending on how I do the tiger, which since I'm doing these as like tiger pelts, I might do this something different. Panther-like, black. Just do the whole thing in black and then contrast it with the feathers. That would be interesting. All right. You know what? Let's see how it looks. What's the worst thing that can happen covering the head of my model with black paint? If I'm going to do a black, I can probably just wash it with something for that gray. Do something a little off black, maybe. Maybe a tone. like pulling out like snakebite leather. Yeah, I'll just do a snakebite. Wildwood. Wildwood's great. Wildwood's really great for doing wood. Go figure, right? So here's the Black Templar contrast. So, and then what I'll do is once that's cured, I will... you ready for it? You ready to see what hideous brush I'm going to use today to do this particular task? All right, there it is. There it is, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm just going to turn my wet palette this way because I will be using it. It's nice and wet. Yeah, it's good enough. So I'll throw some down. And then this sort of thinning, I wouldn't thin contrast with water if you're thinning a lot. You can thin a little bit with water, but it tends to break down. You really need to get yourself some of the technical contrast medium. And I find this is invaluable for making, well, for lightening up your washes. So I'm actually going to take a tiny bit of this. And you can see this one has been polluted now. You can't see. Well, there you go. So I'm thinning this a little bit because I probably want a little bit more of the gray to show through. Because when I go in to highlight it, I'm going to be using something that is distinctly different enough from the rest of the black on the model, because she's wearing black leather armor, right? Or, you know, she's basically wearing like a leather cat suit from head to toe, an armored leather cat suit from head to toe. So if I'm going to do this beast up here like a panther, does it have a bionic eye? I do believe it does. That's cool. The eye here is bionic. You know, I think I changed my mind on that. You see, my first instinct was go with my gut, but I think before I'm about to execute, I think I changed my mind. I think I want to do it in some... I want it to be colorful. I want it to stand out. Maybe what I think I'm going to do... Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. Is I'm going to do it white. So, very pale. And I will probably start with this Tusk Ivory. And I may not use any washes at all. I may just take the Tusk Ivory and I'll just turn my palette. You're not going to be able to see it, but trust that it's there. And look, it took me until that point from where I said I would start painting to actually execute and put paint to brush. So, yeah. So, called it. He went for the white. Woo! Yeah, I guess that's that good last second save, right? Where you're like, oh, it'll look really good white. And then that way I can kind of give it some dark feathers coming off, which will make it unique to her from the rest of the gang, because she doesn't have any other feathers on her. So a lot of the rest of the gang that I'm painting will have, because I assume they get them from the same weird space peacock. I don't know what kind of bird gives off these, what are they, synthwave feathers, but whatever kind of bird it is, it's some kind of space peacock that they get their feathers from. It's also entirely possible that they get their feathers from like some weird dinosaur creature, right? Could be some space lizard. Space lizard? What's important is that it came from outer space. So we got 9 people. Just your particular watch as Chris at any moment will go for black feathers. Well, I did say I wanted the feathers to stand out from the rest of the model. So I'm being really careful and meticulous with this because this goes on a little thin and I'm going to have to do more, but I want to make sure that it's even so that it dries and then I can go back over it. If I'm going to contrast the feathers, I'm just going to keep using this Tusk Ivory to cover them. If I decide to do the feathers dark, then that would just be whatever I would use to wash them, because it's easier to paint feathers. Painting feathers with washes is a huge cheat, because you want to be able to pick out all the pieces of the feather. Here's some filthy pigeon feathers that I picked up off the streets of Toronto. Shows you the kind of man I am. I'm willing to put probably mite-infested feathers into my hat. I mean, who knows? I don't care. I stopped caring about those things last year. I certainly wasn't the type of person that would do that 12 months ago. But times change. Let's get back to painting her on the camera. So yeah, so I'm going to go underneath here and get under the lion's snout, just so that there's a nice amount of paint under there for when I apply the wash. Yeah, so this will need a nice second coat, but we'll let that ruminate. And then I guess the hair back here we'll paint white, because that I will also do with contrast of some kind. Don't know what color. Most of my girls seem to enjoy having some nice crazy colors in their hair. Some do, some don't. I did some natural hair colors on some of them, and then other ones I did completely outlandish, ridiculous hair colors. You know what? I'm probably just going to end up carrying on and doing all of the feathers with this Tusk Ivory, because regardless of what I do over top of it, it's going to need to be lightened up like this. So this is just me base coating and considering my next move. And a lot of times when I'm painting models, that's how I figure out how I'm going to paint them, as I just start painting them. I may go in with like a master plan. Like for these, my master plan was to make them was to base my paint style off my old Metal Escher gang from the 90s. So it was a continuous. So there was some continuity there. There's the same gang, maybe not the same name, but maybe they share some heritage, and that's why they both rock the red. All right, why not? It's your narrative. It's your chronicle. You build it and make it and do it whichever way you want. There's no right or wrong way to do this hobby at all. It's more important to just do it if it's something that you love, and it's something that you find brings you contentment and joy, and you're enthusiastic for it, and you're excited, and you think about doing it, and you want to do it. Just do it. If you don't paint, buy yourself a paint set. Go to your friendly local gaming store. Look at all the paint. Look at all the miniatures on the walls. We have some great ones here in Toronto, and I'm sure you have some nearby you that have a wide selection of miniatures. There's also the internet. If you want to shop on the internet, like I said, every company has different offerings. I can talk about companies whose games I don't play anymore and why I don't play them. I could probably fill an entire episode as to why I no longer play War Machine. But I still there's still War Machine models that come out that I look at and go, wow, that's cool. That's really neat. And I guess their new game, the idea that I thought they were going to execute with Warcaster, to talk about Privateer Press for a minute, was not what we got. And I don't want to say what I thought they were going to do, because I think it's a really good idea and someone one day could do it with the resources and sort of the concept of what they were doing. But I think that they realized that maybe it wasn't that I don't know. Maybe they didn't have the vision that I thought that they had for the game. And that's, I guess, what it ultimately comes down to. So you can see as I'm doing these feathers, I'm kind of still leaving some of the gray in there. And that's just because I'm not going over and doing a second coat over that part. Like I'll gently kind of tickle it with the brush to get a little bit of paint down there. But I want some of that gray to show through, because that will just help define out my shadows a little bit easier. Because this isn't really dry brushing, but I am the principle of what I'm doing is I'm getting paint on the area that would get hit if it was a dry brush. It's clearly not a dry brush because I'm taking this paint off a wet palette, and my brush is pretty dry, or my brush is controlled. The moisture on my brush is controlled by me and my marvelous mouth, my marvelous saliva. How about Warzone? I played a lot of Warzone Second Edition. If you've, I have pictures that are on negatives that I will get up on the website. Probably whenever I can get access to that neg scanner that I'm supposed to have access to. Probably sometime around the first of the month, I'm thinking. And then I'll be able to take pictures of my Bauhaus army for Warzone. I played Warzone Second Edition. I didn't really play First Edition. I played Mutant Chronicles once, the board game, the big, I think it was called Mutant Chronicles, Doom Trooper, whatever the board game was that came with like the 3D ziggurat that you built in the middle, and it came with all those plastic models. I liked Warzone a lot. Nico, my friend Nico, and I, who's now in the chat, Torben, I think it's a Forge World bit. Yes, her headdress is a Forge World bit. Sorry, I can't. It's hard to paint and manage chat at the same time, but and respond to everything there. What was I doing? I need that Tusk Ivory back. So yeah, Nico can tell you in the chat. I'm sure he has no problem waxing about Warzone. We had great fun with the game. He had a capital army and he had an imperial army. I was pretty much all in with the Bauhaus, but I did start a Brotherhood army, and I kind of wish I had kept those models. I think I sold them off. And if he's here, I have one Chronopia model. You can see him in the galleries on my site. I'm not sure. I think he must have been put away. But I have a Chronopia Judge from the human faction, from like the imperialist human faction from Chronopia, which was made by the same company. I really liked Warzone Second Edition. I thought it was... I liked the fact that you had 2 actions. It used D20, which I'm normally not a huge fan of D20 games. But you know what? It really worked for what you needed to do for the way that you set target numbers and stuff. It took the 20 mechanic and made it something that was appropriate for a game, right? Because when you're looking at game mechanics, you need, well, how many variables do I need? Do I need a D6? Because D6s are obviously the most accessible, and I think that most of the successful games will use D6s for the most part. But again, there's a sort of design philosophy that, well, you can do a custom dice mechanic. Oh, and that's another thing. I realized this while I was contemplating Hero Quest a bit more. And if you go back to the beginning of the stream, you can hear me talk about Hero Quest a bit more. Quite a bit. Give my opinion. With Hero Quest... and I made note of it when I was watching the video. It uses a custom dice mechanic, and it's always used that. So the original Hero Quest didn't use basic D6s. There were special dice in there. And that's something I learned today, I think. You learn something new every day. So where are we at? I think it's made us something about the Blood Berets first. It was named after the Doom Troopers, because the was it Doom Patrol or Doom Troopers? Were picked from amongst the human corporates, right? They were picked from Mishima, and I did a Mishima army too. I was going to start doing that, but I never finished. I never got past the planning and maybe a few model stages. But my Bauhaus army was big, and it's gone, unfortunately. I don't know where it went. Probably lost somewhere during a move, along with my Junkers for Void, which is the game that kind of came out of Warzone, was Void. Which is a great game, and Kev White sculpted a whole lot of crazy models for that, because he did a lot of the Doom Trooper, a lot of the Mutant Chronicles miniatures. So his Mutant Chronicles was the RPG, was the board game called Doom Trooper or something. Someone look it up, and then Warzone was the miniature game. I had a great Imperial army of the plastics and all, but it was 15 and didn't know. So yeah, so I had all the plastic Bauhaus. Nico and I split the box, because that's what we did back in the day, was we would split the box, because when you get, and playing Warzone meant we kind of got into the 40K third edition. Like we played a lot of second edition. Like second edition was the 40K that we played through most of like that youth, with that youthful exuberant time of having all the free time to play all the miniature games and playing Warhammer 40,000 most of the time. So we did that, and then we played Necromunda, which was just 40K but cooler. And then instead of when third edition 40 came out, we were still playing Necromunda, because we've been playing it that long. And then Warzone came out, and I think Warzone came out just a little bit before third edition. And it blew us away, and we decided that that's where we would go next. So we started playing Warzone 2nd Edition, splitting that box instead of doing Warhammer 40,000 3rd edition. Now, we did Warhammer for 30,000 3rd edition later, after we had quite a fill of Warzone, but we didn't make that transition from one edition to another, which from 3rd edition on, every time there was a new edition, with maybe the exception of 7th edition, I was probably engaged with playing the game to some extent, to one level or another. So I played a bit of 3rd edition, but 3rd edition was also the time of Warhammer Fantasy Battle 6th edition, which was huge for me. And one day I'll dig out my 6th edition Warhammer army, complete with Grimgor and his giant unit of metal Ardboys, his Immortals, the Black Orcs, the Blorks from up there. So I'll break those out at some point. Sorry, I'm just going to grab some throat fuel here, because constant yippity yapping, right? So CPT incomprehensible in Warzone. What's CPT? See, I forgot. I've played so many games that I may need a refresher on what's is that command point? Command point total something? I don't know. I'm trying to remember Warzone. I know that Warzone you had 2 actions and you could do different things, kind of like a new Necromunda. I wonder where they got that idea, right? Where you basically your first action could be like a move action or an aim action or a take cover action or something like that, or like, and then your second action was usually your shooting or whatever you want to do. But I think there were some guys that could just action twice, do the same thing, you shoot and then shoot again. And there were certain characters that could definitely do things like multiple things, like throwing hand grenades, but then they would also lead the other guys. Warzone was great, and I think it's entirely possible that we got the 3rd edition box set like before we got into Warzone, but I think that when we looked at the 2 games, we decided that Warzone was where our focus was going to be. I don't know, Nico could fill me in. Nico may remember. It was a long, long time ago, so I'm not really sure what we did first in that respect. I do know that we went from Rogue Trader to Warhammer 1.5, which was the battle manual and the vehicle manual, and those rules had been previewed in a White Dwarf earlier, where they changed the way that close combat works, and they changed the way that certain things, and then they brought out the battle manual, which changed the way vehicles worked completely, or the vehicle manual, which changed the way vehicles worked completely, and then there was some other stuff. So there was some late Rogue Trader era stuff that I guess we commonly refer to as 1.5, which was a fairly different game, and you would still use like the same, like these would be the army list would be from here, and then from here, compilation, and this is a reproduction. I don't have an original. I do have this, which tracing the ownership of this particular version of it could be complicated. It may have belonged to, in the past, it may have belonged to me. It may have belonged to Nico. I know it was just recently Nico's. But it may have belonged to me previous to that, but it also may have belonged to Kirill's brother or me previous to that, or it may have belonged to someone else. We're not really sure. I know that I had a copy of this at one point. It may or may not be this one. Doesn't matter now, right? But I never... Nico had a copy of this, and it probably fell apart because these books were written... This one was okay, but the binding on these were pretty bad. The binding on the Orc books is terrible. My Book of the Astronomicon reproduction... Surloc's Bound for the legal office. This is when I had access to a fairly high quality printer, and I was able to get some fairly high quality scans of these older books, and I was able to make copies of them for myself. The one I don't have a copy of, because I have reproductions of Here We Go and WOG. So these are perfect bound reproductions from high quality scans of the originals. And don't ask me where I got them, because I don't think I have them anymore. The PDFs of those books that I've seen floating around now aren't as nice as the scans that I use for these, and I don't know where I got these, and I don't know if I still have them. I may have them, but they might be like burned to a CD-ROM somewhere. That's how old those reproductions might be. So yeah, just ran out of steam. Oh, Warzone. Well, yeah. So Warzone ran out of steam. I think, you know what I think killed them? So Chronopia, which was their fantasy game, which is also a cool game, which was like the models for Chronopia. I love. They are early, hassle-free, not hassle-free, early Kev White. sculpts, and Nico can attest to how much of a joy it is to paint those types of miniatures. And I might have some Kev White sculpts floating around here, but I have some newer ones. I have some of the hassle-free stuff that he's done, but not. I don't have any of the really old stuff like that he did for. He did Warzone. He did Chronopia. He did Void. And then he did another one of our games that never was, which is Keltos. That was a game that Nico and I both bought into because it was so as Warzone is to Void, Keltos is to Chronopia. It's the fantasy version of the game made by the company that makes the sci-fi version of the game, of a game, right? So Void, I think a lot of the people who made Warzone 2nd Edition went on to make Void. I don't know who went on to if the people who made Chronopia went on to make Keltos. I don't know. I don't think so. Keltos is a great game, and one day I will dig up my Keltos rulebook and go through that here because that's a fantastic volume. Just the artwork in it and the design, the layout is way ahead of its time. When Keltos was coming out, Confrontation was just sort of coming up, so that design aesthetic was like the Confrontation design, which was also ahead of its time, or really defined. When you're ahead of your time, you define your time, right? So Keltos is kind of like it's got this beautiful art aesthetic to it. It's a subject that is near and dear to me because of my Celtic heritage, and so it sort of spoke to me on that level. And amazing miniatures. Amazing backstory, amazing layout to the book. Next week, whatever, maybe sometime I'll grab that book and drag it down and I'll flip through it because great. And it was a game that never was. They released one supplement for the human faction. They may have released a second. I'm not sure if they did, but the company, I think at that point, Icor, who published Void first, Icor, I want to say. I think they went. Out of style. Captain Incomprehensible. Is that me? But there were regular dice in Heroes for Movement. Right, there were regular dice, but there are custom dice as well, right? I had a Great Imperial Army. Oh, we essentially played Warzone 2nd Edition during all of 30K. Yeah, we did. So most of 3rd Edition, because 3rd Edition, you have to remember, was around for a long time. 3rd Edition was around longer than it should have been because of a little thing called The Lord of the Rings. But that's a tale for another day. So where are we at? We're at about an hour 10 now, so 1 o'clock. All I've done painting-wise is, I guess you guys want to see me figure out what color I'm going to do that tiger head, right? So I'm going to do it in contrast, and I think, I'm thinking, what's that? Nazdrag yellow. Well, that's a weird color. Excuse me, it's a little warm in here. I'm just going to pat my face. I know I'm super shiny and washed out on the screen, so it doesn't really matter. But it's we've had just a bunch of really nice weather in Toronto, and so it's quite warm outside. And come back from a walk, and it's quite warm inside. So let's see how this Nazdrag yellow is going to look. I'm going to drop it onto my palette, anyways, and then I'm going to start at the bottom here, right where it meets her face. So this is kind of going on like golden. Almost like it's a lion. And I think because of the hair and because of how much of it almost looks like a mane that she's wearing on her head, that I think I'm going to lean into the lion aesthetic here. And we'll go with kind of a golden, which isn't too off from the tiger that I'm doing on their loincloths, but at the same time, except for that bit of 2nd Edition. I'm not sure what that's in reference to. Maybe I should just read random things out of the chat that I'm unaware of. So hopefully you're seeing me moving some contrast around. And again, this is the kind of thing I think that contrast is great for. Because this model's, these resin pieces have a lot of very small details on them. And it's easier to see them when there's a heavy, well, to lack of a better word, when there's a heavy contrast on them, and then you can see sort of what you're dealing with. So there's something on the top up here that almost looks, there's its eyes, and it's got one eye shut and then the other eye is open. So the other eye is like a little targeter. So you know what would be cool is I get her like a laser dot targeter, but it's actually her helmet, and then she just like lines it up with her pistol here to the laser, and that's like, I'm just trying to figure out ways I can put equipment on the model without actually having to put the equipment on the model. We haven't decided how wussy wig we're going to be, but I think it needs to be heavily enforced because it is Necromunda after all. So, and that is the rule. If the model's armed with it, it's got to be on the miniature. And that's, again, going back to the fact that your, sorry, see that? Is that your champions and your characters, so I think even your Juves, I think I asked yesterday if anyone could remember, and I didn't bother to look up the answer myself, so I think this back here is more of the tiger, or more of the lion pelt. Oh, no. That's fine. We'll just take that out of there as best we can, soak up that, and I might need to go back over that. I think that's actually, it's actually feathers, so, and we'll see what that looks like when it dries. It'll be nice and golden. Then I can probably highlight that up with some of the tusk ivory over top of it, so the base coat over top of it with maybe like a dot of the Nazdrag contrast thrown in, because again, mixing like a heavy pigment flat paint with the contrast, and using the contrast to give you your intermediate shade mixed with the thicker paint, and it also acts as a thinner. So using contrast to mix down other paints is I don't know if that was an intended thing, but it's certainly something I do. So what color should her hair be? How about Achelian green? No, how about not? I don't know. You guys pick her hair color. It's going to go on the back of her head down here. I think I need to figure out what I'm going to do with the feathers before I commit to the hair. So what am I going to do with these feathers? I kind of like them white. I'd almost want to do them like black and white, black and white, black and white. Or do them like pheasant feathers where they have like tiger striping on the feathers. So if there's tiger striping on the feathers, that might not show that great. Yeah, what do you guys think? Chris, are you keeping the feathers white? That's checker feathers. Looks like an egg and some stripes. Look like an egg. Add some stripes. Yeah, I would have to add some stripes in order to do them like pheasant feathers. But, or I could just do it so that it unifies her with the rest of the gang. I mean, she's already got this big lion headdress. I think that kind of makes her stand out as a BAB that you don't want to mess with. Alternating black and white might be good. Yeah, that might look cool. And I would have to, so if I did white, black, white, black. So then the middle one would be black, white, black, white, black, white, black. Yeah, what the hell? That sounds awesome. So before I do that though, I am just going to touch up the feathers a bit because I did splooch a little bit of the wash back here that I thought might have been part of the lion pelt, but then when I spun it around, I realized no, it's a feather. So we'll just touch that up again. Touch up here where there's a little tiny bit of bleed over of the contrast. Get in there with the white. Hopefully you guys can see that. I'll make sure sometimes that I orient miniatures in a weird way to get the angle that I want with my brush, and you'll see like both my hands like crooked, like over like this, because I've spun the model upside down and then I've got the brush over top of it because I'm trying to hit a particular spot that's inaccessible going in the normal way. That's what she said. Okay. Feathers. White and black, and then alternate black and white at the tip of the feathers. Interesting. Well, let's see how they look. Alternate black and white at the tip of the feathers. So I would have to paint halfway up with the wash on the ones that I'm doing black and leave the tips white, and then do the tips on the others with black. I'm not sure. It might just look better if I just alternate black and white. I see what you're saying. Like if you alternate, then it's basically, you would get like, you could actually achieve like kind of like a checkerboard look to it. I think I like the idea of going black and white solid. So like because there's like in the necklace here, I've got a black crystal and a white crystal, so it's like balance, right? So I think I'm gonna go full black on the black and full white on the white. So let's start with this one. So black, white. Oh no, black. I was just checking to see if you guys can see this. So this is one of those situations where I've got the model turned a weird way so that I can get access to the thing. So that one's black, that one's white. This one's going to be black. And that one's going to be white, which means that this one here in the middle is going to be black. And they're listening to Johnny Cash outside, the construction guys. It's been pretty quiet now. I was talking to the guy. They're pretty much all the noisy stuff is done, and it's just finishing up and cleaning up. So yay, that means that there'll be less noise interference. So that's black, which means this one's white, which means that one's black. Now I got to do the backs of them. Kaya Stormborn. You guys know who that is? Maybe not. She is the standard bearer and mage for Scarlock's Wood Elf Archers. So she has, her staff has like a stylized set of wings on it, and there's more wings on the front of it than there are on the back of it. So I tried to do them alternating, black and white, black and white, black and white, and I realized that my pattern was getting disrupted because there are more feathers on the back than on the front. And if you look at the profile of how it's molded, you can see where the extra ones kind of appear. And so it screwed up the whole thing. So I just was like, oh, I just painted the whole thing gold. When in doubt, paint the whole thing gold. Feathers. If you named her Sunny, that would be great. Her name's not Sunny. Her name is Enkindu or Onkindu, something like that. So that's black, white. This one's black. Let me do that where you can see it. That's white, so that makes this one black. That's white, so that makes this one black. What if I'm wrong? Oh no. That's black, so that makes this one. That's white, so that makes this one black. Yep. White. And then that little one is white, so this one here will be black. It's behind it. Go and tell that midnight ride. You guys, I don't know if you can hear the music. The gambler, the backbiter. Sooner or later, God'll cut you down. Sooner or later, God'll cut you down. The Man in Black. As I always appreciated Johnny Cash, but as I descend into my twilight years, I think I've gained a far more appreciation, especially for the music that he made late in his life. Not that I'm going anywhere. Not that I feel like I'm Johnny Cash and I'm in my 80s and I'm run down because I spent a life of hard drinking and hard smoking and, like, but you kind of start to understand where the man's coming from. And I hope you guys, maybe some of you do, maybe some of you don't. I have no idea how old any of you are. So yeah. Where are we at here? We're at, it's 1:20. So I think I'm probably going to end around 1:30. Just because there's things going on that require my attention. So I'm not going to do 2 hours today. But yeah, so I guess that's kind of what it's going to look like. I need to accentuate the white a bit more, especially on these feathers where I've left the gray showing. So I'll do that with this brush right now, and maybe I'll be able to, so right here, I want to make it a bit more white because the tip is going to be a lot whiter when I go in and highlight. I'll highlight these right up to white, right up to a pure white. So they look quite, what's the word? So there's some purity to them, right? Like she got them off a creature that is renowned for the whiteness of its wings, like a swan or something, right? Maybe a swan or some kind of other random white space bird. I don't know. You tell me. Let me know what... oh, that's interesting. So she does kind of have some more feathers back here. then, but I'll figure that out when I get to figuring that out. Yeah, I just want to touch these up because I'm gonna have to go in and really touch these up. And then the black ones, I will probably pick a gray, probably something with a lot of blue in it. Even though her cat suit has blue in it, I'll do something a little bit different. Probably a brighter blue, or probably something like this, like a deep blue, and then wash them again over the tips of the black ones, and then maybe end up something like this, glacier blue, so that it's a fantastic looking, vibrant black sort of, and then it won't it won't look like she has, black leather, because essentially it's both. It's the exact same process to do both right now. Yeah. So, anyways, let's call it there. I will begin painting her again. Well, I want to get these girls done. The goal is that I'm no longer painting Escher on October 1st, because October 1st, of course, is the beginning of the month-long celebration of Orktober. And, sorry about the towel. This is under these lights, and because it's been so nice, it's quite warm right now. The especially important for the Necromunda. Yeah, they're space whatevers, right? Feathered Grox of the Cronkia Prime. Okay, Torben, that's what it's going to be. That's where she got the feathers from. And maybe the bird itself produces like perfect white feathers and perfect black feathers, like in sequence and in patterns. And that's how it peacocks and attracts a mate, right? Is that it's got this like black and white plumage that it creates these fractal designs out of when it presents itself to a potential mate. And the female feathered Gronxes are just these like little brown hens, right? Like the males are these like ostentatious, just like in the real world. The checkered feathered grox, perfect. I'm gonna cut and paste those out of here and add them to whatever documentation I create for my Escher gang. I'll have names for birds from birds, or maybe they're not even birds. They could be like weird, like raptor dinosaur things, right? That just grow these feathers, and they use them in the fighting pits, but they remove the feathers before they stick them in the fighting pits because the feathers are so nice, and in the fighting pits, those feathers are just gonna get tore up. So maybe that's what it is, right? Or maybe they just breed the birds on Necromunda and then sell the feathers up hive, right? Because that could be another thing that they do. They seem to have a thing for cats and cat-like things. So, which is weird because they have all these feathers, but I'm sure that maybe they're cat feathers, right? Or like the famous Marx Brothers movie, horse feathers, right? So on that note, we're closing in on, there goes my webcam again. We're closing in on 1.5 hours. I think, aren't Grox the big meat lizards in 40K? Grox cats. Oh, no, yeah, we'll steer clear of the blue humor today. I gave you a little taste of it earlier if you caught it, but it was, but you missed out. So you'd have to go back and find it, and it was very subtle. But that's as much as I'm gonna get there. Yeah, so that's Friday in a nutshell. Hope you guys hope this was good and entertaining. Not so much painting. I'm finding that I'm painting less, and I'm thinking you guys want me to paint more. So what I might end up having to do is break up the week a little bit, because like I said, I do have old man eyes, and like I have a lot to get painted, but I tend to paint in shorter spurts. So maybe what I'll do is, like I said, Friday may just be a sit and chat show, and that may be where I break out the Frazetta game mat and I look through books and things like that, and we talk about that. And then Monday, but also it might be better for me to break it up, like do like Tuesday, Thursday as more of a chat, as more of a sit and chat, and then Monday, Wednesdays, Fridays as painting days. If you guys have any feedback on that, that'd be awesome. 1 hour painting, 1 hour talking. Yeah. The only thing is that I kind of want to have the table set up for doing specific things. Like if I look through a book, There's some books. Some of my books, when I look through them, I should put on white gloves because I like to keep them in as nice a condition as possible. Yeah, late night streams. That's something that Alex is talking about doing with me, and I think that we're gonna try and do. I think I want to call it Chronicles After Dark, and it'll probably happen in the evening. It'll probably have to happen around like 10 o'clock, 10 p.m. sort of thing. We both have kids, so kids have got to be in bed and asleep, and then I'd have to quiet storm it because I'd still want to keep my voice down. So you won't get me flailing and ranting and raving at my microphone like you do on the Nooner here on Eternal Chronicles live Monday to Friday, 12 o'clock until whenever o'clock. 2 o'clock seems like it's probably a good time for me to start thinking about it. I want to give you guys what you want. The Witching Hour, the Midnight Chronicles. It could happen. I want to do remote stuff. So if you guys have, even a webcam, and we can Zoom and chat and hobby and whatever, if that's something that appeals to you, let me know. Because I don't know where you are in the world. Like Torben, I'm assuming you're in South America somewhere. No, somewhere in the Netherlands, but I don't know. That's just an assumption. Jankmaster, I don't even know who you are. I don't know who any of these people are. Going to run it back to see those orcs. Yeah, well, those orcs are coming. You're going to be Denmark, so yeah, so I was right. Close enough. Netherlands. It's all that part of the Scandinavia, right? Yeah. Somewhere I'd love to go and visit someday. Just to go and look at Vikings. We have Vikings in Canada, though. There's a settlement in Labrador, off the coast of the Maritimes in Canada, so off the eastern coast of Canada. They uncovered Viking remains, and they sort of rebuilt this Viking hut and village that they found, and they were able to trace that back to long before that slaving murderer Christopher Columbus showed up. He was just a man of his day, I think we need to stop looking at people of their time and judging them by contemporary morality. Definitely, you want to definitely look at things and take lessons from things and take examples from things and analyze things and realize where we went wrong. But you can't look at those things and, I guess I should stop there for now, because that's straying dangerously into non-polite dinner conversation. So we'll leave it at that. And I can't believe no one brought up my necklace. I'm gonna look through the chat. No one brought up my necklace the whole time I'm wearing this ridiculous thing, and not a single query about it. So, Vikings weren't exactly angels. No one was. That's the point. Nobody was angels. It was another time. I think you discuss about, obviously, like I said, lessons from the past, but you take the good, you take the bad, you take them both, and there you have the facts of life. The facts of life. So I'm going to sign off with the theme song to an old 80s sitcom. And I will end the stream there. So everybody, I hope you had a good day. It's 1:30. I'm ending the stream perfectly on the time that I said I was going to think about ending the stream. And nothing you can possibly do could get me to stop and engage further. Tootsie, the Dustin Hoffman movie? Tootie! Okay, well, okay. I will grant you the clemency and the reprieve for the typo. Yes, Tootie. It's the facts of life with Blair. It was Blair and Joe. Joe was the jock who rode a motorcycle and wore a leather jacket. She was the cool chick. There was Tootie, and who was the festively plump girl? What was her name? Natalie. And then it was Mrs. I'm gonna say like Mrs. Hannigan, but that's Annie. What was the name of like the house mistress from Facts of Life? I can't stop the stream until I figure this out. Should I just go and look it up? That would be cheating, right? Mrs. something. Well, I'm going to go look it up because it's going to kill me, and you're all going to go look it up with me. Facts of Life cast. IMDb. Give it to me on the IMDb. That's where you'll find it. Edna Garrett, Mrs. Garrett. That's it. So there you go. Tootie, Natalie, Joe, and Blair. I got Dorothy. I say, oh no, yeah, Natalie, yeah. Oh, Dorothy. Oh, so Tootie's first name was Dorothy. She was always just Tootie. Yeah, there's a TV show I remember. Do you remember? Am I gonna get the member berries? She was also on Different Strokes. Well, I think was it a spin-off of Different Strokes? There was a spin-off of Different Strokes. I loved Different Strokes. As a kid, I was a massive Gary Coleman fan. And then Knight Rider happened. And suddenly Gary Coleman wasn't cool, and David Hasselhoff was cool. Michael Knight was cool. I loved Knight Rider. Still do, kind of. I didn't watch anything of it, but that theme song came on. I might pause for the cause there. All right, so we're now past where I said I was going to stop, and I've got nothing more to talk about. I'm going to go back to, let's go here. Anyone want to talk about the awfulness that I find that these HeroQuest models are? Yeah. If you want the HeroQuest game, and you don't mind about the models, I mean, it from what I understand, it's a fantastic game. It's just the miniatures, and that's what works for me, is that the miniatures themselves are so-so. They all look like exact. It feels derivative, and it feels like they've been gathered together from other places and mashed together to try and create something. And the cover, the fact that they did a cover and they took the Les Edwards cover and basically made a modern fantasy interpretation of that, the more I look at it, the less I like it. Because you look at it and then it becomes, you know, my fear is that long term it will muddy my memory of the original Les Edwards HeroQuest cover. And I'll start to think of aspects of the new one because it's so similar, yet that shows you. That's a perfect example of the tonal shift, you know, that only happens with time, right? We're 30 years removed from when that, probably longer. It was probably painted in 88 or 89. It was probably painted far before the game was released. And the game was released in 89, so it was probably painted, 88 or something. So between that and now, when this one was painted, it was probably 2018, maybe 2019. So you can see that there's a tonal shift in the style of the art that you only get with changing aesthetics that only occur over time, right? You won't have competing contemporary styles that look like that. And I'm sure that someone's now going to go back to like 1987 and throw a whole lot of images at me, like, well, this looks like the cover, and this looks like that kind of art, and this looks like that kind of art. There's certain things that they do in modern fantasy that I think a lot of people who have an appreciation for classic fantasy, and again, this is not right or wrong. There's no right or wrong way to think about art. No one should tell you how to consume art and what art you can and can't enjoy. I'm just expressing my critique of it. Where was I? I'm deep in art critique here. The way that the new cover presents the characters and the core things is so, there's a softness to it, and I think the Bard talked about it like that old has like that realistic style, and this is almost a parody of that realistic style. It almost sits in mockery of that realistic style, because it's like, well, we can do that, but we're going to do it with these cartoony barbarian and cartoony video game orcs and Pathfinder, like all these different elements that don't feel cohesive together because there's not a unified style. There's the cover there. And then the way that, obviously, when Les Edwards painted it, he didn't use Photoshop, right? This has obviously been sketched out, and it may have been sketched out on a tablet. I would be surprised. It would be. I wouldn't be surprised that there's an artist sketch of it somewhere, but I have a feeling that that was quickly transcribed into digital format, and then that painting, that cover, all this, all the artwork for this was finished on a computer, right? And again, if that's your thing, and it takes a great deal of artistic talent to be able to do those sorts of things in Illustrator and Photoshop and whatever software the kids are using these days to make their deviant art, if that appeals to you and that's something that draws you towards the game, then maybe you're gonna buy this game, right? I was funny. Someone was Alex. I'll jump in. We'll save it for another time. But you need to go for your walk. I'm just talking now, man. It's all good. Because we're back onto the Hero Quest train. We open with Hero Quest and we'll close with Hero Quest. So yeah, I was talking about. Oh, so Alex showed me a picture of the elf for Hero Quest, and I've seen the models, hundreds of times, but it was when I was looking at it and I realized that I need that model. I was like, oh, that Hero Quest elf. I need a Hero Quest elf because it's based on a Jess Goodwin elf, which it's based on a metal Jess Goodwin elf that I don't own, but elves that he had sculpted at the time. So it was based on his work, and then I realized, oh yeah, much of Hero Quest is actually Jess Goodwin sculpts, and he is by far, in a way, he's my most revered miniature sculptor. I don't know if he's my favorite. I think Kev Adams is my favorite, just because Kev Adams makes orcs and goblins and continues to do so to this day. I have some Kev Adams orcs and goblins and hobgoblins that he sculpted within the last 2 or 3 years, and I'm sure he's sculpting away at stuff now. He released a new version of the Snotling pump wagon called the Hubris wagon or something, and it's hilarious because it's powered by drunken dwarves that the Snotlings just keep basically feeding them like fungus brew to keep these dwarves like completely just tripping balls so that they power this this new version of the Snotling pump wagon. And I'm going to pick one up. It's pricey, but I think it's worth it because I think I look at these Pathfinder goblins and I go, where's the character? Where's the unique, like, the first time I saw Pathfinder Goblin, I was like, okay, well, that's a neat take. It's kind of different. Like, instead of having a big, round, gnarly goblin head, they have like a football with pointy ears, and it's that accentuation of the features. So, as opposed to going with something subtle like the avatar that I use for my channel, that classic, goblin face that Kev Adams does so well, they pull the things out, right? And that's kind of what Brian Nelson did with goblins between 4th and 5th edition when they did the newer goblin aesthetic and that new plastic Night Goblin set, which set the face sort of for what goblins would become in the Games Workshop goblins. Pathfinder Family Guy Stewie goblins. Yeah, that's what they kind of look like. And it's based on, I want to say Karl Kopinski is the artist that sort of drew them like that, but I don't know if it's Karl Kopinski, so I don't want to accuse him or credit him for that. That's just the name that popped into my head. But I thought he did a lot of work for Pathfinder. It may be a different artist. It's the same thing as with Dieter Lizzie or Dieter Ezzy, who did a lot of work on Dungeons and Dragons, and his stuff has this, like, that's when I think of like late Dungeons and Dragons art, it's his art that I think of. There's a fly buzzing around. You can probably see him. They're coming in for the winter, kids. So his stuff, and they did some. There's a whole range of miniatures. Dark Sword miniatures. The whole range of miniatures based on his stuff, and his owl bears are so cute. So I really like his work. Obviously, those are the big two for me in terms of miniature sculptors. Not the ditcher, but they sculpt. Anyways, I think that's it because I'm starting to stammer, which means that I'm probably getting tired and I probably need to go for a walk. It's weird. You get like, I'm physically antsy and because I'm drinking MCT oil and it's burning up inside me, and I either got to burn it or I'm just gonna pass it. So got hit by a car. Who did? You did? What? Oh yeah, sorry, I heard about that. Maybe that's why the name popped into my head. Anyways, we will talk about artists and art. That is something that, as you can see, I'm pretty opinionated on. I collect a lot of art books, and I appreciate and absorb the work of a lot of artists. I was born into a family of artists in a lot of ways, so it was almost inevitable that I would find my own path into that, and that's kind of what miniatures have become for me. So Wayne Reynolds designed those Pathfinder goblins. Okay, Wayne Reynolds then did he do he did a lot of like color artwork for Pathfinder, right? In black and white, like he kind of for like the Pathfinder book publications, because that's sort of where I like when I see those goblins, those types of goblins. That's just where my head goes. Look at that barbarian. Look at that Conan, or that not Conan, as I tend to call those types of things. And the dwarfs. We'll take one last look at the characters, and then I'll sign off here. Again, the dwarf, the elf. She's like that's the elf from Record of Lodoss Wars. Go look it up. Record of Lodoss Wars. That is the elf, and that's the first time that I remember seeing those dagger ears. And so it's like I said on my reaction video to this, I said that it's the anime interpretation of Western fantasy is now coming back and influencing Western fantasy. So when I look at a lot of this stuff, that's what I'm seeing. Is I'm seeing a lot of that, like it's gone through, and obviously because anime and the tropes around anime have had an impact on like our cartooning over like our cartoon programs and our entertainment over here, and anime's anime, right? We all know what anime is, right? And that the influence that it's had on art design and aesthetic here, like that orc, yeah, you could see that orc in like a fantasy anime now. Like that's what an orc would look like. Fishman, well, it's certainly like when I see that kind of fish, it has, I don't want to say it has an Asian influence, but it kind of does. And then the Chaos Warrior is just a Chaos Warrior, so it's just a big armored, broody guy, right? And if you look at the way his shield is, you can almost kind of see a Chaos Star in there. I would love to see like a 360 of that model to see how that shield sort of finishes out. And again, like they're very cartoony, and I think that is because we've had this cartoonification, this lack of realism in fantasy art as we sort of move away from that, But then again, I was at Chapters. I visited a couple used bookstores yesterday when I was out window shopping. And I went into Chapters, and I don't buy books at Chapters because usually when I buy a book, I'll try and buy a used copy. If I can get a used version, I'll buy a used version because it's usually cheaper and it's usually got more provenance built into it, right, with its smell and the way that I love. Like I said, I love used books. I found this in the little library that we have in our laundry room in the basement of the building here. All the tenants, we just have like a bookshelf and it's take and go. And I left a whole bunch of Horus Heresy books there, and someone took them all, like a big stack of probably like a dozen or so of the Horus Heresy paperbacks, the regular format ones with the gold cover on them. And I was gonna take them somewhere and try and sell them, and then COVID hit, and I was just like, I just gotta clean up my locker. I gotta clean this stuff out. So I threw them in there. So and then I found this, and this is the 1982 publication. I had to check what year this one was published. This is the version that I read in high school, but that would have been years later because in '82 I was 9. But this is the '82 version. This is the '82 publication, and it's the one with the illustrations in it, and it's got a card in here too. Oh, Baker's Dozen Donuts. So someone's business card that obviously the previous owner was using as a bookmark. Baker's Dozen Donuts, 5945 Dixie Road, Mississauga, Ontario. That is a ways away from here, but not outside of the area. So yeah, beautiful. You probably can't see it because it's so washed out, but beautiful illustrations in this. I'll look through this. But yeah, I found that downstairs, so I don't... and then I found another book, for my kid, and then... Usually used bookstores are the best place to just pick up old paperbacks and stuff. And I own, some old paperbacks that I bought used back in the 80s. Like my Dune, I bought the entire Dune saga. I bought used copies of them. But I've owned them. I've owned those books since I read them mid-90s, 93, 4, 5-ish. So yeah, I guess I'm just going to leave that there. Not Fermieri, and also 4th edition D&D. Wayne Reynolds. Yeah. All right, guys. So we'll cut it there because I'm now 15 minutes beyond when I said I was going to cut it. And I'm losing steam. So I will talk to you guys on Monday. I might post some random things over the weekend. So if you like and subscribe to my channel, hit the notification button. I'm supposed to be doing this, right? This is the YouTube thing. Like and subscribe, hit the notification button so you get notified, because YouTube is the man, and they're coming down on the creators hard, and they ain't giving us our props, yo. And on that note, I'm going to end the stream because it could only get worse from here.